Hello and welcome back to the Watchmaker Studio. Today on the bench we have a Seiko dive watch from 1992. This is model 7002-7009. This model was issued to U.S. Navy SEALs from the late 80s to the mid 90s. And I was sitting here thinking to myself, man, I bet these watches have seen some cool stuff.
And the kitchen sink.
On you, everything looks good. Take this. Good luck.
Man, I have the best thoughts. So do you guys see this crystal? These little pock marks that are all over the crystal? Well, this watch actually belongs to a friend of mine. And I asked him about that. I said, hey man, what happened to this watch? Why are these little marks all over the crystal? He says, well, that's from when I'm welding. You know, the sparks are flying off and the hot pieces of metal are flying off and they're landing on the crystal and melting it. Well, all right then. That's quite a thing. So let's open it up. Okay. So as you can see, Seikos are pretty no-nonsense, not a lot of decoration, but they are solid watches. They're really well built. They last a long time. And so we're going to go ahead and take this watch completely apart and down to all of its individual pieces and try to figure out any of the issues that it might have, and let's get them fixed. So first thing I'm doing here is I'm actually going to take out the crown so I can remove the movement from inside the case. Let's take a closer look at this dial. Oh yeah, dial's in perfect shape. Yeah, you can see those pock marks there. But yeah, the dial's in terrific shape. Looks really nice. So we put the crown back in so that we can test the hands and make sure everything's working. And now I'm going to take off the hands so that we can remove the dial and actually put it away. This tool that I have is a great little tool that I have. Kind of a mid-century tool, but works great. Takes the hands right off. I love using it. So I'm going to put the hands inside of this little membrane box, and this is to protect the hands, make sure that they stay safe. Very delicate. We want to make sure that they don't get scratched up or anything. There's a couple of screws here on the back that actually they're eccentric screws. Turn them, and then that releases the dial on the front side. So we'll do that and take the dial off and then put the dial away. This is a little container to protect the dial. Put it in there and make sure nothing happens to it. So now I'm taking off the oscillating weight from the back of the watch. This is part of the automatic winding mechanism. And you'll see that as I'm taking the parts off, I'll look at each one and inspect it to make sure that everything's in good working order, nothing's wrong. And that way I can see if there's anything that I need to fix or correct. This part I'm taking off here is called the date dial guard. And that's actually what holds down the date wheel, which is the wheel with the numbers on it. And I'm going to take it off and I'm going to put it in with the dial just to make sure that it's going to be safe. Nothing's going to happen to it. And you'll notice that I'm using wooden tweezers, and that's when I'm working on the dial or the hands. I use the wooden tweezers to make sure that it doesn't scratch anything up. going to start by removing the hour wheel. That's the part that the hour hand actually attaches to. This is the minute wheel. And this is the cannon pinion. Now the minute hand actually attaches to the cannon pinion. And I'm using this great little tool that I restored to actually remove the cannon pinion, because normally they're kind of hard to remove. And this actually allows me to safely remove it without doing any damage either to the cannon pinion or to the movement. There's a lot of tools in this hobby, I'll tell you. Now I'm going to remove what's called a date jumper, and it's actually a spring, and that's why I'm holding it down with this tool in my left hand. Otherwise, it just kind of pops off and flies away. Now this little wheel is actually made of plastic, and it's the only wheel in this entire watch that is made of plastic. Now hold on a second. Oh, yeah, it's broken. We've got some broken teeth on there, and unfortunately we can't fix it, so we have to replace it, because that is the intermediate date wheel, and that's actually what turns or part of the mechanism, along with these parts here, that actually turn the date wheel. This part that I'm unscrewing right now is actually the larger date driving wheel along with the date finger. They're actually stuck together. I think there may be some little bit of old grease on there, but you'll see that there's actually a couple parts that are kind of stuck together there. Let me see if I can, there you go. Yep. Well, that was actually the date finger washer that holds down the date finger and the intermediate date wheel. There's the washer right there. Okay. So now I've turned the watch over, and this is the second reduction wheel. And you'll notice the screw actually unscrewed in a clockwise orientation. It actually unscrews the opposite. And that's why the screw actually had those lines on it, so that you could know that that actually unscrewed to the right, or clockwise, excuse me. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the power out of the mainspring by holding the screw, the ratchet wheel, which is on top of the mainspring barrel, and pulling that click spring out so that I could reduce the power in the mainspring. And the reason I'm doing that is to make sure that there's no pent-up power inside of there as I start taking parts apart from the watch. You don't want stuff to just go flying everywhere. And that's the ratchet wheel. So now I'm going to start by taking these screws off, and this is to remove the barrel and train wheel bridge. This is the bridge that is holding down the mainspring barrel and the train of wheels. Now this is the click spring, and it's what keeps the watch from unwinding. Now I'm removing the third wheel, and it's the third wheel. There's actually, the main barrel is the first wheel. There's a center wheel underneath the barrel, and that's the second wheel. This is the third wheel, and then now this that I'm removing now is the fourth wheel. And then after the fourth wheel is the escape wheel, which I'll show you in a second. Now I'm taking off the balance cock, which actually is what holds down the balance wheel, which is kind of the heart of the entire watch. And there we go. We will carefully put it away and put it over somewhere safe. Oh, we got an issue here. I don't know if you can tell here, but this hairspring has got some damage to it. If you see that there's some bends in it, and it's not sitting perfectly round. So we're going to have to try to fix it. Either that or replace it, but I'm going to try to fix it. I think I can do it. All right, so let's keep going. So I'm going to take out the mainspring barrel. You'll see the mainspring is actually inside of this barrel. And it looks like the mainspring's got some decent scratches on it, so let's take a look at that. Now I'm going to remove the pallet cock, which is holding down the pallet fork, which you'll see, and this fork goes back and forth as the watch unwinds, and it actually controls the speed at which the watch unwinds. So carefully remove the pallet cock here, and we can take a look and see how the pallet fork is doing. I think it's okay. Yep, this is the pallet fork. There seems to be stuck. I think we've got some old oil in here maybe that's kind of gumming stuff up a little bit. And I think that's why some of these parts are sticking together, but we'll get it all cleaned up. Now this is the escape wheel. This wheel, in conjunction with the powered fork and the balance wheel, make up the escapement, which is also known as a Swiss lever escapement. And what the escapement does is it controls the escape of power from the mainspring. It controls that rate of release, if you will. In the case of this watch, it does it at 21,600 vibrations per hour. Well, I counted, that's how I know. No, not really. But there's you'll see it later in the machine. And that, by the way, is this center wheel that I just removed. That wheel was underneath the barrel, the mainspring barrel. So now we're turning the watch back over and we're going to start taking apart the keyless works. And this is how you control the watch, right? So this is the crown attaches to these parts here. It's actually what you use to either wind the watch or to change the time. Now, in this particular case, you don't actually wind the watch from the crown. The only way that you can actually wind this watch is by moving, by getting the automatic movement to it. So you shake it up to get it to start going. Now, shortly after this, they started incorporating the ability to wind the watch via the crown. But up to this point, it was just in the automatic movement. Now, this is not all watches. This is just Seiko. This is what they chose to do. And I think it had something to do with, they were very big into, only put in the watch what needs to be there. And they figured, well, the automatic movement will wind the watch. Why do we need to have the crown wind it? Well, it's definitely more convenient to have the crown winding it, but they did incorporate that later on, just not in this watch. So the newer version of this style watch actually incorporates the winding from the crown. Now this is called the first reduction wheel, and it's part of the automatic movement, and that is rust, maybe? It looks like rust. It's kind of like a rust. And that spring there that I like to call the War of the Worlds spring, because every time I see it, I think of those robots with big legs that are kind of marching along through the city. But anyway, that spring is the automatic movement, and this is a very simple, elegant solution that Seiko came up with for automatic movement. I mean, if you look at the automatic movement, like if you remember the last watch that I did had a ton of different wheels and reversing wheels and all kinds of stuff going on there to do the automatic movement. This watch has that little spring with the two arms and that first reduction wheel, and that's called the Paul lever, by the way. The War of the World spring is actually called the Paul lever. And then it just turns that first reduction wheel. And I'll show you that later after we put it together. But anyway, what I'm doing here is I'm actually trying to clean up a little bit. So I'm doing a little bit of first cleaning. I'm going to go through and I'm going to use some isopropyl alcohol to clean up some of this older residue that's left on the plate. So we're just doing that to help the cleaning machine not have to work so hard, right? So this first cleaning is really just to get stuff loosened up, if you will. Now, I'm opening the barrel here, and you're going to see the mainspring. So inside of this barrel is where the mainspring is. So this barrel, you'll notice that it kind of splits in the middle. It's kind of different than some of the other barrels. But what I'm doing is I'm pulling the mainspring out, and that little piece in the middle, that is the barrel arbor. And the barrel arbor is actually what winds the mainspring itself. There's a little hook on the side of the barrel arbor that actually hooks into a little hole that is in the mainspring, on the wall of the mainspring there, and that actually hooks onto it, and then it tightens it up as it goes through. So now I'm going to carefully unwind the mainspring, and you got to be careful here because this thing will kind of fly around, so you got to clear the stuff off your bench or things are going to go flying, so I got to be careful here. So I'll slowly walk it out, because if I let go, this thing will fly out. So you gotta hold it out, you got to walk it out a little bit with your thumbs. And there it is. And it's deformed. It's supposed to lay flat. So something's going on here. There's been some of this deformation that's happened to the mainspring. So we're going to have to get a new mainspring. And as I'm cleaning the inside of this barrel, I can see some scratches in there. And again, that's further in line with the fact that mainspring was deformed and it's leaving scratches on the inside of the barrel. And that's a problem because that adds friction. So as the mainspring is unwinding and it's got those scratches inside of the barrel, it's more friction, and friction is the enemy of watches, right? Everything that we do here, all the cleaning, the oiling, everything that we do is to remove friction. So stuff like this is not good. So I'm going to take this over to the lathe because we're going to have to address this barrel. So this is my watchmaker's lathe. And I'm mounting the barrel lid to this collet. This collet actually squeezes from the outside in. So as I tighten up, it actually has several rings inside of it, and it actually squeezes on the outside edge of the barrel. And I'm using my graver here, and I'm taking very, very light passes on the inside of the barrel, because what I'm doing is I just want to clean it up. I just want to take off a very, 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 very light skim amount of that barrel. And then I'm going to come in with, this is 1000 grit sandpaper right here on this stick. And then on the other side of it is 10,000 grit. And you'll notice that it's super shiny now on the inside. And that's the goal, right? I mean, I just want to clean it up so it's as little bit of friction as possible. And that looks pretty good. Same thing. There's that collet I was talking about. And then this is the outside of the barrel. And same thing. I'm just going to clean it up, make sure it's nice and shiny and smooth to reduce as much friction as possible. Again, I'm using, in this particular case, I don't even have to use the graver, just the sandpaper is enough. Yeah, you can see the reflection of my finger and the sandpaper in it, so it should be good. Let's see how we did. Yeah, I think what you're seeing there are my fingerprints, but it's pretty good. It's pretty clean. Should be good to go. So what I'm going to do now is polish all of the pivots of all the wheels. Now this is huge. This is what I have found that does the most effect when it comes to reducing friction and really helping the watch to run smoothly. And these sticks are made of silicone, and they have different grits to them. They come in a pack of like 5 different colors, but the green one is really the finest grit. And it makes all the difference if you just do this. And then now I just need to clean off that polishing compound off of those wheels because I don't want to introduce that into my cleaning machine. Now we have to address the hairspring. And you can see in this shot here, you can see actually that you can see the bend in the hairspring. It's a little bit bent inside part of the end of the loops, and then that very end piece that actually goes into the stud is bent up. So this is actually a pretty longer process, but I'm going to speed it up because you don't need to watch this whole thing. It's very long. It's probably an hour long with me dealing with this. Okay, maybe not an hour, maybe 20 minutes, but still, it seems like forever. Okay, I think we've got that first step, but that was one of 3 parts. That looks pretty good, but now we got to put it on the balance cock here, and I got to get the stud inside the hole, because what I'm looking for now is that the hairspring has to be perfectly concentric once it's inside of the jewel, and you'll see it's not. So got to keep working on it. Okay, now I got to put it on the plate itself, and now I actually have to go in and check it. So I'm making sure that it's running flat and that it's staying concentric. Okay, so I'm going to use some air here, and I'm going to get it going, and it looks like it's breathing pretty well. It looks pretty good. I think we did pretty good. Very nice. That'll work. And actually, this is with the old oils and everything, so I haven't even cleaned it yet, so it's actually running pretty smoothly, so that's good. That's a good sign. Now I need to check to make sure that as I move the adjustment cock that it stays perfectly centered, and it does. Okay, so now I'm taking all the parts and putting it in these individual little cleaning baskets. You just want to make sure that all the parts are not banging into each other and hurting each other, so that's what these little baskets do for us. All right, so let's get everything inside the cleaning machine. Now, while this cleaning machine is doing its thing, I just want to say thank you. You know, I posted my first video a couple weeks back, and I was blown away at how many folks watched it. I got over 100 subscribers, and I got a ton of communication, comments. So, wow, thank you so much. I am really appreciative, and I am really happy and excited about, what this channel can be, and I really am looking forward to it. So please help me to grow this channel. Please like and subscribe if you are enjoying yourself, and tell your friends. Also, please comment. I had a great time answering the comments the last video, so please, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think. Anything that you want to see or that you want me to work on, just send me a note. Thanks. All right, so it's time to put the watch back together. Now, the first thing I'm doing is I'm putting a little, it's called braking grease on the edge of the barrel, on the inside of the barrel. And what that does is it keeps the mainspring from slipping. It slips just enough, right? Because the automatic movement, it will keep tightening up forever and ever. So you want to have a way to kind of control that a little bit. So that's what that does. And this is my mainspring winder, which is really cool. And then it does a great job of winding that mainspring. And I can pop it right back into the barrel there. Put a little bit of oil on this mainspring. And this is a new mainspring, by the way. And I'm using a vise to hold on to the barrel arbor, because that thing, I tell you, they will, that mainspring will just fling it away. So I've learned this the hard way. It's much better to use this vise to hold on to that barrel arbor. And then I'm putting some HP 1300. I'm going to talk a little bit about the oils that I'm using. This is a medium viscosity oil, so it's a little bit thicker than some of the lighter oils that I use, but that's what this oil is. It's HP 1300. And the barrel looks nice and clean, so I think it'll be good. And then I'm putting it here on this little device. Actually, this is a barrel closer, and it just press it down and locks the barrel up. Looks pretty good. I'm just going to put the barrel there away for safekeeping while we get started with the rest of the watch. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by putting in the center wheel. And this is the center wheel. And we got to oil it. So I'm going to put some HP 1300 on the center wheel. And just a little bit. We don't want to get carried away with the oiling, because it's very easy to over oil a watch. So just a bit. And then we'll get the barrel back in here. And same thing, I'm going to put a little bit of HP 1300 on the barrel as well. And the barrel looks pretty good. Got rid of those scratches, so that should be better. Okay, looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to put the click spring back into place. Again, this is the part that keeps the barrel from unwinding once everything's put back together. So this goes in place. It's very nice. Very simple, elegant design. It works really well. This is the center wheel bridge. So this goes over the center wheel to hold it down. And it also helps to align the third and fourth wheels. So we'll put it in place here and screw it down. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the escape wheel in first, because it's lower than the other one, so it's actually easier this way. So now I'm going to put in the fourth wheel, which is the next one in progression, and then I'll put in the third wheel, which goes right into the middle of the center wheel. There we go. You want to make sure they're all lined up and properly aligned, and then we can put the bridge over them. And this is the barrel and train wheel bridge that holds the barrel and all of these individual wheels in place. Now, we got to be very careful here when we put this on. We got to make sure that all of those pivots are inside each one of those jewels and are spinning appropriately. Like you can see, I'm turning the barrel and making sure that all the wheels are spinning. Because if it wasn't, that means that one of the pivots wouldn't be in its correct pivot hole. And then you can very easily break one of those pivots. And then you gotta go find a new wheel. All right, everything looks like it's in there right. So let's keep going. All right, so now we're gonna put in the ratchet wheel and adjust it so the click is underneath it. Screw this down. Okay, and I'm going to use this tool to hold the ratchet wheel in place while I tighten the screw. Otherwise, it would just spin around. And actually, it would wind up. You'll see it as I spin it. It winds up the whole watch. But it doesn't hold the wind because the pallet fork isn't in yet. So that little bit of oil there was for the reducing wheel. It's called the second reduction wheel. And this is the one that has the screw that tightens up counterclockwise. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to put the pallet fork back in. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the pallet fork. This actually didn't go into the cleaning machine. I kept it out separately. And I'm using this solution called One Dip, which is to clean things like this. And the reason I don't put it in the cleaning machine, or I don't use any isopropyl alcohol to clean the pallets, is that what's holding in those jewels is shellac, and shellac will actually soften and loosen up inside of alcohol, so you got to be careful, or those jewels will just fall right out, and then good luck finding them. Okay, so we're going to put the pallet bridge, excuse me, this is the pallet bridge that we're putting over the pallet fork, and we got to be careful, make sure that that pallet fork is in the pivot correctly. There we go. Looks good. Okay, so we're going to tighten these up, and then we're going to start working on the balance cock and the balance wheel and see if we can get this watch running again. All right, checking to make sure that it's running properly before I do the final tightening. And now I'm winding the watch. I'm putting a little bit of wind into it, because what I'm testing for now is I'm going to move the pallet fork back and forth, and it should lock on each side just like that. And that is just telling me that the power from the mainspring is reaching all the way to the pallet fork. So far so good. So now I'm going to move the pallet fork to where it belongs. And then we're going to put the balance cock in here with the balance wheel and see if it comes to life. All right, here we go. Okay, doesn't seem to want to be come to life here. Let's make sure it's getting in place here. All right, let's give a little bit of a, okay, kind of fell in. Oh, doesn't really want to kick up. Something's going on. Okay, there it goes, but something's wrong. I don't like that. It doesn't seem to be as smooth as possible, but again, we haven't oiled anything, so I probably just need to oil stuff, but it's pretty sluggish right now. Let's tighten it up and take a look, see if we see it. All right, well, let's oil these jewels up and see if that helps. It's running a little better, but it's not where it needs to be. And I should probably get another tool just to make sure that this guy doesn't go flying away here. Oh God, where'd it go? Oh, okay, there it is. That's why you use the two-hand method when you're removing those, because they will fly away. So sorry about that. I'll do better. All right, so we're using the same one dip to clean these individual jewels. And what I'm going to do is, you can see there's still a residue on that jewel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over on my paper, and I'm going to use this leather buff, and I'm going to clean the jewel. I like this method of cleaning. It just seems to do a good job. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of oil on it. And it's a tiny little dot of oil, of 90-10 oil that I have to put on here. So turn it over on the flat side. And then I'll hold it down and then put this little drop of oil. And that's it. That's all you need. That's the right amount. And we'll put the other half on it and watch it bounce away, but got it. Now the jewels are held together by capillary action from the oil. Hold them together, which is nice. And then we'll put it back in the watch. And we will carefully put the spring back on this time and hold it down appropriately. There you go. That goes right over that pivot. Now we're going to put the spring back on, and this is called a dia-shock spring. It's a Seiko's kind of shock springs, but what these do is they actually protect the pivots. So before this invention came along in the 1940s, these were fixed jewels in there. And if you dropped your watch, either the jewel or the pivot would break. And what this little invention does, it has a shock protection, and it moves up and down with that little spring. So if there is a sudden jar to the watch, it doesn't break the jewel or the pivot. Smart. And it's been the way ever since. So now we're putting the other side of the watch together. What I'm continuing to do is I'm continuing to oil all the pivots, and I'm using both HP 1300 on the center and third wheel, and then 9010, which is an even lighter oil, which is what I used on the jewel. I'm using on the fourth wheel and on the escape wheel. And this is how I should have taken off the shock in the first place, on the other side with two hands, so that it wouldn't go flying away. But at least I learned my lesson, folks. At least I learned my lesson. All right. So let's get that out of here, put it in the solution, get it cleaned up, and we'll do the same thing. All right. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to clean this jewel same way with this buff, and then we'll oil it up and put it back in the watch. Again, all of this oils and all of the lubrication should help the watch to run better, and hopefully that will improve the movement of the balance wheel that was very sluggish. Oh, sorry about that, folks. I ran out of battery. Sorry. Hey, rookie mistake. I apologize. So speaking of rookie mistakes, I forgot to put on the lever pawl. So I had to step back a little bit. But it's okay. Just a couple steps back. We're just taking that bridge off, and then we're going to put these things in place. And oil things appropriately. So this is the lever pawl, and I'm putting just a tiny bit of oil there. Some HP 1300 where it runs. And there's a War of the Worlds spring. All right, now we're going to carefully put in the first reduction wheel, and then hold the whole thing and flip it over and clip it together. There we go. All right. Let's put it over here to make it easier to put the little clip on. And here's this tiny little clip. We're going to very gently push right onto the wheel. There we go. And that holds that wheel in place. Very simple design, but it works. And you'll see when I spin it, you'll see how the two arms will grab that second reduction wheel. I'll show you that in a second. All right, let's get this bridge back on here. And then I gotta put the ratchet wheel back on in the second reduction wheel. All right, so we'll get this tightened up. And then we're going to put the ratchet wheel back in. Okay, so this is the ratchet wheel. Slide it in here, put it on back on the barrel. Okay. There we go. So now I'm just tightening it up. And we're going to put that second reduction wheel on. Get that on there. And then put that reverse threaded screw in. There, now you got a better shot of it. You can see it better. And those 3 lines is how you know that it's reverse threaded. Okay. And now I'm going to carefully put the lever paw on the wheel. There we go. You'll notice, see how it's like, it like hugs the wheel and it grabs it from either side. And then as it spins, you'll see that it kind of turns the wheel. Just tighten it up. 1 second. There we go. Put a tiny little bit of oil where the pawl meets the wheel. And then as I spin it, you'll see, there you go. See how it turns the wheel? And it will turn it in both directions. All right. So now we have to address this case. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the bezel. So I'm going to use this Hortec tool to carefully lift up the bezel and then give it a little twist and the bezel will pop right up. It works really well. You gotta be careful because there's a tiny little spring and stick in there that hold, that give tension to the bezel as it spins around, and it's what gives that clicking feel when you're spinning it around. So yeah, you gotta be careful there. So we're gonna take off this gasket that's inside, and pretty dirty in there. I mean, look at my bench. That's a big mess there. Okay, you can see some of the damage on the case that we're gonna address, and then let me take off this tiny little gasket that's on the crown stem, and we'll put it aside because we're going to replace all these gaskets, make it all fresh. And this little part here is actually holds a tiny little ball bearing. That is what presses up against that bezel. So that's actually again, like I mentioned, this would gives it the clicking sound. Okay, so this is my Rober crystal press. And I'm using one of the concave pushers, and I'm going to push the crystal gently out of the case. Okay, nice and softly, give it a twist, and it should pop right out. More, a little more. There we go. Pop right out. Okay. Okay, so it's inside the die. So there is the crystal and the inner bezel that is underneath the glass of the watch. All right. And I'm going to take off this gasket that is around the crystal, and we're going to replace that as well. And what a mess. Okay, so I'm going to take these parts, put everything in the ultrasonic cleaner, and I'm going to go into my vintage polishing cabinet. It does a really good job of keeping the dust out of the air, but I'm using an Artifacts wheel here to basically, it's a bit of an abrasive, kind of a soft kind of rubber sort of wheel, but it has some abrasive in it, and it actually will heat up the wheel and actually allow me to move that metal and clean up those edges, give me some nice shape to it, and then do a little polishing. Just a simple polisher with some green polish. So this is the next day. I let the watch run for 24 hours and I still was not happy with it. So I did some inspecting and I found that there's too much movement on this barrel, and it looks like the top pivot is okay, but this bottom pivot has widened out and it's letting the barrel kind of dance a little bit in there, give it a little side shake. So we got to fix that. Now to fix it, I'm going to use my staking set. And this is an inverto, candy inverto, which allows you to put stakes in upside down as a stump, so you can use any of your stakes as a stump. And I'm using 2 rounded stakes. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lightly tap it. And what this will do is this will squeeze in, if you will, the sides of the wall of that hole and make it smaller. It's very interesting. And it works really well. But then it's going to be too tight. And that's okay. That's what we want. We want it to be, see, I can't even spin the barrel. It's holding the barrel, it's so tight. So then I'm going to use the smoothing broach and I'm going to widen that hole back up. So I made it tighter. Now I'm just going to loosen it up just enough to give it a nice smooth run. And my goal is to make it so that the barrel can really spin nice and freely in there, but doesn't shake from side to side, which was the issue we had previously, which, if I thought about it, explained why there was damage inside of the barrel and all those issues that we saw before. Now you can see it. There we go. It's spinning pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bridge back on just to test it, to make sure. I want to make sure that it's in there in place. There we go. All right. You know what? Okay. Looks pretty good. So let me see what the shake looks like. Okay, perfect. That's where I want it. I don't want it to shake any more than that. Okay, so before we put it back together, I'm going to use these countersinks just to chamfer the edges of the hole to clean it up real nice. Make sure there's no rough edges on there. You can see the little shiny edges. So this works really well. And again, everything is to reduce friction. All right, so now we got to put it all back together again. Now you've already seen this, so I'm going to speed it up. But I'm going to take this time to talk to you a little bit about putting this watch into perspective. Like, where does the 7002, this particular model, fit into Seiko's iconic diver history, right? So in 1965, they came out with the Seiko 62 MAS, the original, the OG. And that one is cult classic, right? Hard to find, very pricey if you do find it. 1968, they released the 6105-8000. This was the first cushion case with the crown at 4 o'clock. Followed in 1970 by the very, very famous 6105-8110, also known as Captain Willard. And this was famous because Martin Sheen actually wore this watch in Apocalypse Now. So made it very popular. That's why it's called the Captain Willard. That was his character in that movie. After that, in 1976, they released the 6306 and the 6309. Both turtle cases. One was a slimmer version of the other, and these watches were actually issued to Navy SEALs in the early 80s. And then came this watch, 1988, the Seiko 7002. Call it a transitional diver, and some were issued to Navy SEALs in the late 80s, mid 90s. In 1996, they released the SKX 007, which was ISO certified, legendary cult classic, right? See them a lot, people love them. And modern day, now they have the Seiko Prospects. And the heritage continues, so they've been doing these dive watches since the mid-60s. So pretty good stuff. All right, so I slowed it down here because this is something that you haven't seen. So what I'm doing here is I'm oiling the pallet jewels. Now that little tip of that tool is thinner than a hair. It's very small. But what I'm doing is I'm putting a little drop of this Mobius 941 oil on the pallet jewel, and then I'm running 5 teeth of the escape wheel through. And I'm doing that 3 times because the escape wheel has 15 teeth on it, and I want to make sure that it gets on all the teeth. Okay, so moment of truth. Here we go. We did all that work. Made adjustments with the staking set, did all that work, welded everything up, fixed the barrel. Will it work? Will it be better? Oh, yes, thank goodness. I think it's already started right back up. Haven't even got the balance cock in there yet. Now that's more like it. Now we're talking. Okay. That's better. There you go. You can see it really running nice and smoothly now. I don't know about you, but I'm relieved. That's much better. But yeah, after I had let it run for 24 hours and the numbers on the time graph were just not very good. So I had to go back to square one, and I'm glad we did because this looks great. All right, so we're going to turn it back over And then we are going to start working on the keyless works again. Actually, before I do that, let me oil the center wheel, the third wheel, the fourth wheel, and the escape wheel. I'll be using HP 1300 on the center and third wheels, and Mobius 9010 on the fourth wheel and the escape wheel. All right, so now we're going to continue with the keyless works. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some 9504 grease, this is blue grease, on the winding stem before I put it into the clutch wheel. I'm also going to put a little bit of the same grease on the face of the clutch wheel. Okay, so now I'm just sliding the crown stem into the clutch wheel, and then I'm going to put it in place. Now the clutch wheel is what grabs onto the intermediate wheel, which you'll see as I put on. That actually will, that's how you control it, move all the hands. You'll see all the keyless works in motion works moving here shortly. So now I'm taking the grease and I'm touching up all the areas that are subject to additional friction, just to give them a little bit of help. Okay, so this is another smart Seiko design. This one piece is both the yoke spring and the clutch lever. You might be familiar with on some of the Swiss movements, there's usually a little spring along with the lever. Well, this is all in one, so it's very smart. Okay, so this is the setting lever that I'm putting on. You'll see how I'm going to slide the clutch lever forward and have it grab onto the setting lever. Okay, and then finally this is the setting lever spring that holds it all down and gives it the tension. So let me screw this down and then we'll test it. Make sure it's all working. There we go. And you can see the yoke moving back and forth. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm adding some additional grease to the high friction areas that are rubbing metal against metal. This is a very high tension area, right? A lot of use happens here. You're constantly spinning the crown, you're setting the hands, so a little bit of grease here is helpful. Okay, so this is the minute wheel. Okay, now this is the cannon pinion. Before I put it on, I'm going to put a little bit of HP 1300 right where it goes on the extended leg of the center wheel. All right, we're going to push that cannon pinion on it. We got to be careful that we don't crush the teeth in between there. So let's pull that wheel out of the way, push it in place, and then we can put the wheel back. All right, great. All right, so now we're going to put in the date jumper. And we're going to carefully hold it down while we put it in place. And this is the piece that will actually press against the date wheel and hold it in place. And here is our replacement intermediate date wheel. Came in, so now we can put it in place. There we go. And then that's the date finger. And this is the date driving wheel. So we're going to put the date finger right on top of it. And then we're going to put the washer, the date finger washer on top of it. Okay, and this is the intermediate date wheel. And finally, we're going to put the washer on top of the whole assembly. And that is the hour wheel. Fits right over the cannon pinion. Okay, we're putting the date wheel in place, and then we're going to carefully pull the spring up and have it capture the date wheel. There we go. All right, it's in place. Now it's locked in. Now we just got to put in the date dial guard over the top of it so that it holds it all down and we don't end up with parts flying away. All right, so we just screw these down, and we're almost done here. Put a little bit of oil in that washer, and now let's go over to the dial. Now, the dial's in great shape. I'm just cleaning it up, just getting a little bit of dust off of it. Nothing fancy. We're not going to go nuts here. This dial's in fine shape. Okay, so now we're fitting the dial onto the movement. There's a holding ring that goes around the dial that I put in first, which I didn't show. And then we're going to tighten up these eccentric screws to tighten down the dial feet that hold the dial in place. And now we can move over to hands. So what I'm going to do with the hands is just clean them up a little bit. They've got a little bit of grime on them. I'm just going to clean them up, give them a little bit of a polish. Make them look nice. Just very light, nothing rough. We're just doing a little light little polish. Okay, let's get these hands on. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm setting the time right to midnight, right as the date changes. So then I will put the hour hand right at midnight. And the intent there is you want to set up the hands right as the date changes so that we are, it changes appropriately. We want the date to change right when it gets to midnight or very close to it. We don't want it to, change date at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, obviously. So we're going to start with the hour hand here. Put it in place. All right, and now we're going to move on to the minute hand. Get that on there. Okay, and now we're going to test it. Let's see how close we got it to midnight. So what we want to see is when the date will change. Will it be right at midnight? Ooh. Oh, that's close. Look at that. That's right there. Very good. Let's put the second hand on here. I will say that this dial does attract dust. Very much so. It shows up really easily. So let's get it all cleaned up and then we can put this thing in its case. Now, I apologize for this. I don't know what happened to the footage, but I don't have any footage of me putting the crystal back or the new bezel on. So they were done off camera, so I apologize for that. However, they're on there and they look really good. So sorry about that. I'll try to make sure that next time I capture that for you, but they are on there now. So a new bezel. Used the heat gun to soften the old bezel glue that was on there and to take it off. And the old bezel is still in great shape if we want to put it back on. But that's happened off camera, unfortunately. So now I'm putting in the case ring there that holds the movement in place. It keeps the movement from moving around. Now I'm putting the oscillating weight back on. And this is the weight that spins around, that winds the watch. Just putting a tiny bit of oil here in the bearings. Put a little too much oil on there, so let me clean a little bit of this up with some Rodico. And then we'll put the oscillating weight on the watch. Okay, just putting it in place and screwing it down. So when I polished this case up, I didn't go nuts, right? I mean, I took away some of the big stuff, but some of the things that I just, it was too far in there, too deep scratches, for example. So you will see a little bit of that left, but I think overall it looks pretty great. I'm just putting this gasket back in and we're going to put the top on, and you'll see, like, you see some of the scratches on the back. I didn't want to go any deeper because those numbers are pretty light. And if I went any deeper, I'd probably lose them. So I didn't want to do that. So how do we do? Let's put it on the time grapher and find out. So we did all that work and this thing is functioning amazingly well. Plus 2 seconds in the dial down, 266 amplitude, 0.2 beat error. I mean, look at that. That's plus 2, minus 1, plus 6 in the crown down, and plus 5 in the crown up. Yeah, that's like a delta of like 6 seconds. That's pretty great. Yeah, this watch looks very good. So we're going to put this NATO strap on here. I think it's going to look pretty sharp. So thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I think it's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe and tell your friends. Take care. See you next time.